Folks, we are in November 1995 here in our ongoing journey into one of wrestling's great boom periods. I am Joe Hulbert, joined as always by the guiding force that is the Oracle of Wrestling. Oracle, this is gonna be an interesting one. It really struck me as I was looking at notes. I was like, man, two of these pay-per-views in this month are really strangely like all-encompassing, right? Where there's a lot of bleed over with feuds. Before we get into all of that, though, Oracle, how are you? You are muted.
Clearly, I'm not fine, so I forgot I muted myself. I always mute myself when we go on air because I like to sip of my my Sprites and Cokes and stuff. So, but yeah, I'm good. Other than the fact that I forgot I was muted there, and
that's fine.
Yeah,
I was concerned. I was like, that's a very long pause for the question I asked. I'm concerned about Oracle. And I looked up and I saw your mouth moving. I was like, wow, this is this is performance art. And then it dawned on me. Okay. Folks, you can, of course, if you don't know, you can catch up on what we've done so far on the Late Night Green channel. All this content has been free so far. You can easily catch up on September and October. This is quite the project here that Oracle is undertaking. He's doing WCW, WWF, ECW. Month by month, we're chipping away at this thing. Let's quickly, and again, you guys can watch it in full, but let's quickly kind of just remind everyone, catch one up. Is this a fair summary, Oracle? ECW is running wild and doing some of their best stuff critically ever. The other shows are in their own unique realm of wrestle crap at times. Last month was a fascinating one for both WCW and WWF for very different reasons, right? One was awful boring in the end, and the other was borderline outrageous. Go ahead, Oracle. Just set the stage a little bit for where we're at.
Yeah, so we're approaching the end of '95 here. ECW is on a very hot run. They have one of their biggest shows ever in November to Remember 1995. Took place on November 18th, I believe, Saturday, November 18th. Yeah. So there was a lot of big time build to lead up to that. Of course, there's some fallout there as well, but the show is just huge. One of their probably 10 biggest shows ever. And then, of course, you've got WWF and WCW kind of chugging along. WCW is in the midst of quite the interesting Hogan characterization. And we'll have to talk about some of the segments that I watched early in November that are incredible performance art.
Yes.
That I can't believe even made the airwaves at times. WWF is coming off a really rough October. But the Survivor Series build gets things on track pretty well. And it's actually a pretty good build for the most part. And things are actually starting to look pretty good for them by the end of the month, I think. Whereas WCW looks a little bit more troublesome, actually.
Right.
Though things get corrected in some ways by World War III. But in other ways, not so much. But
there's some alarming trends, right? And we'll get into them here.
Yeah.
We start, as we often do with ECW. They won 2 of the 4 weeks here, the first 2. And we talked about it a lot, right? November to Remember and what that event represented for the company. Let's start at the top. The build that you pretty deeply analysed there, like last month especially. Funk and Dreamer versus Cactus and Raven. I have actually seen this, which for 1995 ECW is a great outlier, but I tried, when Terry Funk I tried to watch a lot of, and I liked it quite a bit. Talk us through the last pieces of the build and then the match hierarchy for the main event of November to Remember.
Yeah, so they do this sort of, it's actually kind of a divisive opinion on it for how people feel. So they do a Dreamer and Cactus singles match that airs on November 7th. And It's basically like almost this weird video montage with Dreamer putting in like cutting in with like commentary and stuff, and it's very long, but it's really fascinating. And just kind of Cactus like refusing to work a violent match with him, and Raven gets involved, and Funk gets involved, and Funk calls Cactus a bitch and all that. It's just it's really well done. I actually liked it a lot. As Cactus kind of goes through like his like character, sort of like the transformation of like the guy who doesn't want to do anything, and then Raven sort of convinces him to be violent again. And I think a lot of people just didn't like the fact that it kind of went against Cactus's sort of thing that he did that. But I think the idea is that Raven had a hold on him.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you just don't buy into the Raven character, which a lot of people didn't, particularly on the critical side, people are just like, you know. I was fine with it. I was fine with it though. It's quite the segment match. It's just a really good go home deal. Before they go into the match itself. The match itself it's fine. When you watch the whole build, it's a bit disappointing, but it's still super fun. Like Terry brings shit in the ring, and there's a famous spot where Tommy Dreamer hits what is it, Raven with a VCR.
Yeah, I believe so. I think that's what like GIF flying around recently. I think maybe.
Yeah.
How crazy is it that all of that reference is lost on people now?
Yes. Yeah. I think Funk starts wielding a shovel around at some point or something. I can't remember.
That tracks.
But yeah, it's fun. They do a very important thing where Dreamer actually doesn't get the pin on Raven,
which is a big deal.
Funk big does, deal. And Dreamer kind of cuts off Cactus, before he breaks up the pin. But the post match was it's typical Paul Lee booking where the heels end up standing tall at the end because he can't let the moment sink in. So,
yeah.
They end up getting attacked, and Raven has like barbed wire around his head, and he looks like Christ in a crucifixion. It's it's very interesting imagery. But yeah, it's a fun main event. I don't think it was the highlight of the show, but it was a fun main event.
Well, perfect transition. The highlight of the show, in ring at least, because there is a promo candidate, but in ring is the match of the month for ECW. Right, we've returned to this, I think, every time now.
Mm-hmm.
Ray and Psychosis, the Mexican Death Match. This concluding their feud. This, talk about that. You've obviously covered the feud thus far. Talk about this particular match, which again was their match of the month. So go ahead.
So actually, it's their worst match together, and it's actually slightly disappointing. This wasn't a great in-ring run for them. It's obviously a good match. It's Ray and Psychosis. I think the Mexican Death Match format actually kind of hurt them a little bit here. And there was a little bit too much. Like the crowd brawling was fine, but and the finish is great. Ray hits like a big Frankensteiner down over by the crow's nest. If you know what that is, that's where Joe Styles would do commentary down there behind the fans. And then he went back to the ring, and Psychosis couldn't get back up and fell down off the ramp by the crow's nest. And it was a really good finish. But the post match also has the Eliminators jump Ray in the post match, and 911 helps them. So they set up a tag match for that later on.
I bet that got a reaction. It usually did.
It was quite the reaction. Yes, the fans ate that up. But yeah, the match was good. It just, I almost picked Austin and Mikey from the same show, which was a really good sprint.
I can't wait to talk about it. I need to see this because all I saw, and we'll get into it in a minute, it's a separate subject, but all I saw was the run time and Dave's rating, and I was like, I've got to make a point of watching it. I didn't get around to it this week, but I need to because it's short. We'll get into it later. So it wasn't quite the home run of the other matches then. Not quite.
Right.
Okay. Did you do this intentionally, by the way, Oracle, the like Raven-esque dismissal after you said his name? Because that was incredible. If you didn't, I mean,
but we'll just pretend that I did.
You did like the you did the Scott Levy deal. There you go. This isn't right. That's before.
No, that was
right?
in August at Clash of the Champions.
Yes, because this is when he starts doing the all black and it's very fascinating. Yes. Now we just talked about it. Let's get into it here. Austin and Mikey Whipwreck, they're the title match for November to Remember, and they go. I think it was like 4 minutes. I think it was.
Oh, it's not very long at all. So it's important. So let me set it up here.
Okay.
So putting Heyman's booking into your mouth is very difficult because it's Heyman.
Fair.
And there's a lot of convolution there, or at least there's a lot of and sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. But so they did an angle leading up to this where Sandman and Too Cold Scorpio won the tag belts. And what it was Scorpio versus Rocco Rock. And if Rocco Rock won, he won the TV title. If Scorpio won, he'd win the tag titles and pick a tag team tag.
Oh God!
Pick a partner of choosing. Well, Scorpio won. They did like a respect thing. Scorpio was like, "Oh yeah," and then he like beat up Rocco Rock and screwed him over and won the belt. Then picked Sandman as his champion. It was the same night Sandman lost the belt to Mikey, world title match. So they have a rematch here where it's Too Cold and Sandman versus Public Enemy for the tag belts and also the TV title. If either Rocco Rock or Johnny Grunge get the pin, they win the TV title, but it's also a number one contender match. Whoever gets the pin gets the tag belts, the TV title. Unless it's the Sandman, then the Sandman just gets to retain the tag belts and goes and faces for the world title. But which he actually does here. But I'm getting to it. See, again, explaining Paulie's booking is like taking a dadgum, SAT. It's extremely.
What's amazing is the way he explained it. Like the talent probably walked away being like, that was all very simple and logical, and he was actually insane, right? Like that's that Paulie shit. But yeah, carry on.
Yeah, but yeah, so basically it's a tag title, TV title, and number one contendership match. Winner gets a world title shot. Let's just simplify it some. So Sandman ends up winning, and they actually have a great dance off in that match. It's very funny. Sandman does a great dance and thing, and the post match is a hoot because he gets knocked out in the post match is all beat up, and Too Cold Scorpio pours beer down his mouth and he like comes up out of the grave like fucking Thriller, and like starts dancing up. And then like Too Cold drops the beer, and like Sandman gets mad because he's in a fight with him for dropping the beer, and then they like hug it out. It's very funny. But anyway, Sandman gets the win. So Sandman comes out to face Mikey for the title. Austin jumps him from behind, beats the shit out of him with a cane, throws him up against a railing. Sandman gets taken out by the medical team. Austin steals a spot in the match because they're continuing the triple threat rivalry they're going on with. And Austin just cuts a scathing promo on Mikey and beats the shit out of him. Puts Mikey over big. Mikey kicks out of the hot shot. Mikey gets like the roll up win where he does a sunset flip and like pulls Austin's total ass out and everything, and they blur it out, and the peacock's very funny.
Fair.
And he gets pinned 1, 2, 3. Mikey retains. Austin beats him up in the post match. But it's very, very fun.
Well, neither of us are big, Dave guys, right? But him giving a 4-minute match 3 stars felt like a real telling indication of what they did here.
Oh yeah, it was booked very well. It was very well booked.
Just separate from that particular match, Mikey is champ. Any other kind of thoughts on that element of ECW at this point?
I like where they went with this triple threat rivalry. It doesn't last long. We'll get to it next month, but Austin has one big match left in ECW, and then he's the ringmaster. So
if ever there was a moment in time that was truly the rest is history, right? Steve Austin heading that way is a big one. It took a while, but they get there in the end. We'll cover that stuff. So anyway, between a big months here, it's a big one for Taz, right? Taz turns heel, joins Bill Alfonso. This was your best angle, but to kind of focus in here on November to Remember, best promo too, right? Taz's effort. Now, Taz is fascinating in that if you listen to him talk about himself as a wrestler, he would say that his original vision for himself was like a mute destroyer, right? And Paulie kind of pulled this promo out of him, and now it's hilarious because he's one of the great personalities in wrestling. Talk us through this whole angle, but then specifically the promo. Go ahead, Oracle.
So, like, late 95 to early 99 Taz is the coolest fucking wrestler ever.
There you go.
Because it's like, this was the beginning of, like, that incredible run that he had in the late 90s. So essentially, it's Bill Alfonso and Todd Gordon in their little match, whatever. And Beulah's the special guest referee because she and Todd Gordon, or she and Bill Alfonso got into a brawl on an episode of TV early in November. So they're out there having their match, and there's actually a really fun, like, non-wrestler match. The fans chant, "We want blood," and they finally get it. And Todd Gordon bust open Bill Alfonso, and Alfonso's bleeding and all that sort of stuff. And there's a, Beulah's the ref. Well, Alfonso clotheslines her, knocks her out of the match, or at least there's no ref. And the key is, earlier in the night, this is important, Conan wrestles Jason, and Taz had been in a feud with Jason prior to this. Taz comes out for the Conan Jason match in referee attire, and Joey Styles is out there, like, in the ring, like, "Why are you in it?" And Taz goes, "Don't worry about this. The ECW says that I'm an insurance problem, but I'm just here to just kind of," Taz in his Brooklyn accent, and Jason smarts off to him, so Taz gets the payoff on Jason, punches Jason. Conan hits him with his finisher. 1, 2, 3, and the funny part, Taz goes, "You want another match, Conan?" And then just leaves. It's very funny. It's like 20 or 30-second match.
Tremendous.
So what they've established here is Taz is an official of some kind, which is important when he joins Alfonso, who is, the ref of the Pennsylvania State Athletic Commission, who has the authority to allow Taz to be a ref, right? So you have to. Now, that's not totally explicit. They don't, but if you're following along, it makes sense when he turns. So Alfonso's attacked Beulah, and they're, Todd Gordon's looking for a ref. Taz comes down, and the funniest thing ever. It's way funnier. You'll pop this, because what's the one thing that Taz always goes when they talk about hooking the leg on, like, Dark and stuff?
Oh, he gets really mad about it being like a necessity. You
don't have to hook the leg.
Yeah, you don't have to.
This is funny. When he comes in to count for Todd Gordon, he goes, "Hook the leg." He tells Todd Gordon to hook the leg. So it's way funnier 25 years later. Like, he tells him to hook the leg before he counts, and then he stops. He stops at 2.5. He looks up, he picks up Todd Gordon and punches him, and the crowd is stunned. They can't believe it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing about it. The freaking humanoids out there in ECW, they bought everything hook, line, and sinker. So it went over very well. And Taz gets on the mic, and he cuts a scathing promo. And the best part about ECW Taz is he says "fuck" like every other sentence. In his thick Brooklyn accent, so it's awesome. And, like, he's talking about how when Sabu broke his, first of all, the fans, speaking of 18-year build or 18-month builds, long builds, this is already the beginning of the Sabu build for Barely Legal, because the fans immediately chant Sabu because, as we'll talk about later, Sabu returns to ECW at this show.
Yes.
They're already chanting Sabu because Taz and Sabu had a history before. It was a Tasmaniac, and they had a feud in '94. So there's a long history here. The fans are already chanting, and Taz goes, "He ain't fucking coming." And so he goes out there and he goes, "All you people got met. All you people were concerned about Tommy Dreamer when he got hurt. You were concerned about so-and-so, and you were concerned about that piece of fucking shit, Sabu, when he got hurt too." But you never say anything about Taz. And he was like, "Well, Bill Alfonso is paying my bills and taking care of me and my family." And he's cutting this amazing promo. And then after that, like, all the fans are pissed. And one guy near the the hard camera side is cussing out Taz, threatening to fight him. So Taz goes, "Get on the fucking ring now! I'll beat your fucking ass." And like Taz is like, "Dude, it's incredible."
I need to see this, man.
It is literally like the most incredible. Like, it's amazing. Normally, I wouldn't drop that many F-bombs on a public show, but I'm quoting, and it's worth.
Fair. It sounds incredible.
Worth seeing.
I do need to see it. And remember, the folks, I need to stress that was the best angle of the month and the best promo there, intertwined with Taz's turn.
Okay, it's 1995. It's not good, but he also points out that he doesn't have a. They bleeped it out, so I don't know what he said.
Oh, God.
I don't remember what he said, but he said, "I don't have a Jewish lawyer father like Paul Heyman." I'm not so sure he said Jewish lawyer father.
Oh dear. Okay.
Yes. So just a fair warning. There's you kind of have to.
Topey's not wrong, right? I'm quoting can get quite dangerous during this series.
Exactly. That's why. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, indeed. There you go.
That's why I didn't. I didn't quote that one quote from Taz. For one, I don't know what he said, but I have an idea of what he said, and it's not.
It was not fair
it's not
for the
kosher,
peacock.
I guess would be the word to use.
There you go. Yeah, that's one way to phrase it. You mentioned it. You mentioned Sabu's return. Of course, we have literally covered it on this series. He's very short, ill-fated running WCW, right? Which is hilarious because we're in episode 3 of this thing, and he's already back here. He wrestles Hack Myers. Let's talk a little bit about Sabu's return, that particular match, the whole deal. Go ahead.
So the Sabu return was amazing. Had the biggest pop of the night. There's some interesting info that I didn't read too much into about like the process of him re-signing. It's kind of like a long, complicated thing.
Right.
So there's that neat hesitation where like Paulie wants to shake his hand and Sabu's kind of like, eh. But then he does anyways and hugs him or whatever. The Hack Myers match is too long. It's like 13 or 14 minutes.
That stood out to me. When I saw that, I was like, that seems like a choice. But yeah, there you go.
It's like, but it was fine. He did his typical Sabu spots or whatever. And Sabu's like really good in ECW most of the time, but like this match just went too long. And hell, I even like Hack Myers fine. But it just went too long. It should have been half the length that it was. But really, the key is now is they're basically already on the road to like Sabu Taz. People forget it's like an 18-month build.
It's kind of, as someone that hasn't watched a lot of the ECW stuff, and I think putting in the chat maybe in a similar boat, that whole build is kind of like an iconic piece of the promotion, right? And the famous face-off they have, like there's a lot to that. I've seen at least one of the matches. The famous face-off
they have is that November to Remember '96.
So there you go, a year ahead. So that tells the story. Yep. It was interesting you said there about, Sabu is pretty consistently good in ECW. When would you say, give me a timeline of when you would say Sabu's work fell off? Or is it a case of just, it was a matter of where he was at? If he'd have had a promotion that fit him, he would have been great for another, 10 years after this. What do you think? Because I don't know if we've talked about he's running WWE, but like, give me a read on where you think he's at in his career at that point. Give me like a timeline.
I think he was like... He's still super high up at this time. Like 93 and like 94, I know was like the year that he was like exploding like into like a huge phenomenon. From what I understand from my brother and others who were around at the time. He has some really good stuff even in 99, but I do think he falls off in like late 98 and probably like late 98, mid to late 98.
Right. So I asked because as you know, I've been watching some of the TNN stuff, right? Like, and he's on those shows, he's interesting because it does feel at times like he's doing the stuff that he knows people want him to do, but there is no like, it sounds silly saying no fault, but like, there's no like meaning behind any of it. There's no heart even behind it. It's just him just doing this shit because that's what he knows they want from Sabu. So I was intrigued. So you would say by that point, the time I'm watching of TNN, late 1999. Early 2000, you'd say that he has kind of dipped a little bit as a worker. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, elsewhere, Sabu returned. Blue Meanie debuted. what did Meanie do, and thoughts on his first step here in ECW?
So Stevie Richards had a match with El Puertorriqueño, and Blue Meanie was out in the crowd with a cutoff shirt in typical Blue Meanie fashion, and making goofy faces and whatnot. And Stevie Richards was like, "Oh, my buddy," and hugged him. And Meanie came in there, and he's like Richards' lackey. So like, like Richards is like the dorky, goofy, like lackey for Raven. Blue Meanie's even beneath that. So like, Meanie would like almost cost Richards the match, and Stevie beat him up, and like, it was a fun debut. It's a little bit while longer before we get to the BWO stuff, but
right. He's an interesting one, right? Because I think hilariously, there's like a whole portion of fans that know him as the guy that had the fight with JBL, which is a hilarious fault to me. But there you go. Meanie is in the territory. Last month we talked about Bubba coming in, right? Mm-hmm. And in the notes you sent me, one of them was Bubba was getting over and kind of his popularity. I remember you talking a little bit about his gimmick and how much there was some of the hilarity to it. Explain the increasing popularity of old Bubba Ray Dudley. Go ahead.
Yeah, he's super over. Like they're really into the stuttering gimmick. So remember, he does the opening ceremonies for the whole show.
That was I remember you saying that. That popped me.
The opening match was Donnie Allen versus oh God, who was it? Who does he wrestle? Help me out. Do you have it on there?
Oh, I can pull it up. Okay, it's opening match, right?
Yes.
Hang on a second here.
It's a guy I know, and I sort of enjoy, but I can't.
I mean, you've seen a lot of wrestling, so I understand you. The Broad Street Bully.
Thank you, Broad Street Bully. Yeah. So Bubba comes out and gets his whole entrance. Dude, it's hilarious. He comes out in a top hat and like a suit and like all dressed up and stuff. And he's out like doing the top hats after the fans, and the fans are like cheering him on and stuff. And he's all excited. And he comes in and he perfectly says like everything at first. Of course, the whole Dudley gang's with him. Minus Devon, because Devon hasn't debuted yet. And or Spike for that matter. And he's up there, and he's about to do the Michael Buffer deal, and he goes, "Let's get ready to row." He starts doing that, and can't do it, and Big Dick keeps hitting him with his crutch, and Bubba gets all sad and stuff, and and so he just goes, "Oh, what did he say? Oh, fuck this," or something, and he just attacks both guys. And he gets both, and then he just power bombs. He power bombs like Donnie Allen. And the best part is when he gets him up for the power bomb, he does it to where like it takes him a minute. So the fans go, "Bah, bah, bah, bah." And then when he finally gets up, they go, "Bah, bah." And he makes it up when he power bombs. Yes. Yes, it's very funny.
Good Lord, man, that's incredible.
The funniest part is he just covers him, and the ref just counts to 3. He's not even in the match.
That's like from what I've seen, that feels like a very ECW like trend, right? Of just like, if there's a pin, count that shit, man. It's a pin, right? Like that's the thing. Okay, that's awesome. I want to quickly, because this intrigued me. We were talking about you laid out the Sandman Too Cold thing and all that stuff, and with us talking about Bubba, I thought it was a good time to bring it up. Thoughts on how Paul Lee booked tag team wrestling? Because he's a very famous "can they coexist" guy, right? Paul Lee would always do that angle, and it's especially in WWE TV early 2000s when he had SmackDown. Am I right in saying that he's kind of like, he's very much the tag titles is a plot device in my kind of card, rather than it's this incredibly prestigious piece of the wrestling prizes. What do you think about that?
I think you're right and wrong in some. I mean, the Public Enemy they were arguably their biggest stars,
mm-hmm.
in 94, 95. Sabu was probably the biggest 94, but I mean 95 was probably Public Enemy. So like you kind of have to take that into account. Later on, he absolutely used it as a plot device, I think, more
Right.
often than not. I think he already started doing, once I think he knew the public, because, they're already on their way out because fans are training, please don't go to Public Enemy here. So once they left, I think he just started to use it more as a plot device, I think.
Yeah, because it was definitely, I remember even like a few years ago when he got the Raw job, he did it immediately. Do you remember he did it with, was it Braun and Seth he did it with before the draft? And it was like,
God, that was awful.
It was like, this is the most Paulish ever, for better or worse. In that case, it was the latter.
Okay, let me interrupt you quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Not to alarm you, but there's a heavy storm going on outside.
Okay.
My power is
okay.
So
I should be prepared. I should be prepared for the worst.
We should all be prepared, folks. Right. Please stick with us.
I don't know what happens to this show if you're like, this is the one show where I feel like I would actually be fucked.
Right. We'd probably just have to postpone it. You could probably ramble for 5 minutes and say we'll be back on when we can, or tomorrow, or whenever.
Let it play out. I'll just say let it play out. And
let it play out. There you go. I was concerned about that. Now I'm hearing the wind, and it sounds awfully.
Sounds dangerous.
Awfully mighty.
All right.
Well, instead of me rambling on about that, let's continue.
Last thing with ECW, December to Dismember is up next. Any early thoughts on that build? Obviously, November to Remember gets you up to like 3 weeks in, right? So where are we at on that? Just for November.
They've got this big Ultimate Jeopardy match they're going to have. I can't even. It's hard to explain. It's like one of those deals where like the loser gets like some sort of penalty. Like I think Dreamer gets his head shaved, and Raven loses Beulah, and there's a bunch of other like statistics, and it's involving like 10 people, and they all like wrestle each other in regular matches, and they all get together and wrestle each other in a big cage match. It's all very like confusing Paul Heyman booking that would take me way too long to describe, but they do a decent job of building to it.
Okay. Anything else on that front on what's coming up? Is that about it?
I had to turn it up because the wind is literally so loud. I have to turn my volume up. Sorry.
You good? Anything else for December Dismember build, or are we best to leave that for next month?
We'll talk about that next month. So we'll get the TV episodes for that, but it'll be Holiday Hell that we'll get at the very end of the month, which is their first New York show at the Lost Battalion Hall.
Okay.
On December 29th. So that's the show that they have on the network in full. They do not have December to Dismember in full, just the TV the stuff that's on the TV episodes. But we'll talk about it. But we'll talk about what they have on there. And
I quickly want to. This comment has alarmed me. Has Wyndham done some sort of promo? That seems bad.
I saw that. I'm concerned.
Sounds like a threat, right? Wow, control your narrative, Wyndham. What a perfect fit. Hey, Oracle. Bob's gonna have a great time reviewing those shows. Okay, let's put a bow on ECW. Another great month for them, or not quite as good as the last? Where are we at on ECW? Just continuing on, or maybe a couple, little bit of a dip. What do you think?
I would say another great month. I would say another great month.
There you go. ECW continues to dominate this one.
Beulah has to sit in the crowd talking to the fans.
There you go. This is fascinating. I mean, I kind of expected it, but seeing ECW just consistently get the best of this is interesting. Okay. A company that is not getting the best of this, or anything for that matter at this point, is WCW. This is the inaugural World War III pay-per-view. They had one win for the month. I believe it was the last week. But I want to quickly talk about this concept. Because we had a conversation on the Late Night Grin, latenightgrin.com, 4-hour podcast every Friday, about like what ideas in wrestling are so bad that there's no execution that make them good. Is this one of them? That's too many people, right? It has to be too many people.
This is so horribly, like the match itself is so boring.
Yes.
And you can't keep up with anything that's going on.
Yes.
The only good part is like anytime Pillman was on camera, he would just go.
Yeah.
Like the entire time. So like he'd be like choking, like, I don't know, fucking hard work Bobby Walker on the ropes, and
they have the different announcers too, don't they? They have the
they have like 3 announced teams.
Like, I'm not being unfair. I don't think there's a good way to do this, brother. I mean, they maybe could have done it better than they did, but it feels like this is just one of those ideas that is just like It's 60 men and 3 rings. It's never going to be good in terms of a critical wrestling
match. It's a total mess. It's a total mess. You can't follow along. Yeah. They keep they don't know which commentary team to go to, and it's a total mess. And Luger literally works the entire match on the floor. He doesn't even wrestle in the ring.
Tremendous.
And then the finish is just.
We'll get into it.
We'll get to it later, but I mean, Jesus Christ.
Well, in fact, let's get to that now, because one of the big points of this month is the Hogan and Randy Savage dynamic. Specifically, their entry into the dark side and all of the very goofy things that brings. And it feels like with that topic in mind, we need to talk about the finish, which is like one of the greatest Hulk Hogan finishes ever, in which he basically just like another guy wins, and he has to make it absolutely clear to the crowd that he should have won, which is incredible in so many ways. Talk us through all of the Hogan Savage dark side, and then of course, yes, that hilarious finish.
The first episode of November 6, Hogan and Savage are somewhere in Huntington Beach, California, or something.
Yes,
sitting around a bunch of homeless drug addicts or something, I guess is what we were led to believe. And they're all just like dressed in black, and Hogan and Savage rambling incoherently about Savage is talking about taking the high road and you take the low road. And it literally makes no sense at all. And then the homeless guy in the middle is just rambling incoherently, uttering weird phrases that make no sense. It's one of the most bizarre, unbelievable segments I've ever seen. It literally makes no
sense. Of the ground that covers. Like, I want to leave some of Hogan's weirdness against Sting to when we talk about Sting himself, because it feels like we can do that. You referenced it. Let's get into it a little bit here. The Battle Royal finish that I just poked fun at. I'm not exaggerating. It is that funny, right? Like Hogan, basically looks at the crowd and goes, "I've really won," but God bless him, right?
Yes. Well, it's all filmed terribly too. Like you don't even see Savage eliminate One Man Gang at all. Like the whole focus is on Hogan, so you don't even see Savage eliminate Gang.
Of course.
So of course the production is to make you think that Hogan was supposed to win anyway. So it just totally makes Randy Savage look like the most unworthy champion ever. It's it's so bad.
It's that whole story that people talk about with Hogan making a point of taking Savage's moments. It's that to an absolute T, right? Now, you talk about ramblings and incoherence and all that good stuff. Someone in the chat asked, and it's worth bringing up now while we talk about Hogan and Savage, this is the night.
Yes.
The night of one of the greatest moments in wrestling pay-per-view history. Observe this. So much performance art magic in this promo. Fear appears to be on the faces of at least 2 of these men at one point as the flames began to climb. Mean Gene looked legitimately concerned for his friend's health as he rambled and screamed in the microphone. Oracle, please talk about one of the most infamous is probably the better term, promos in pay-per-view history.
So the show opens. It's the best opening in the history of wrestling because it's so stupid. It's just the most ridiculous, utterly incredible thing I've ever seen. I mean, they open the show with Hogan, Sting, and Savage all together, and they've Hogan in a hilarious symbolic moment takes off the black, takes off all black, and he's back on the red and yellow, and the crowd's all excited. And this is actually a show where Hogan seemed to be relatively over at this place,
right?
In Virginia, I believe is where they were, and I think it was Virginia.
I'll check. Go ahead.
But he starts rambling on and on, talking about he and Sting and Savage are a team, and then they're like, Sting's like, "Oh, you're my best friend, brother." And they're high fiving each other and all this other stuff, and Hogan's going on about just I don't even know what he's going on about, and then all of a sudden. He's got this rolled up sheet of pamphlet or paper or something in his hands. It's the Observer. he's got the Observer, and he goes, this is what they call a rag sheet, dude. It's what they call a rag sheet, Mean Gene. Something or another, and so before all that, he burnt. He. But it's important when he takes all of his black clothes off, he lights it on fire in a trash can.
Yes.
Well, the problem is the flame was just giant fireball.
And Sting is like alarmed, very alarmed. He's swatting with his hand.
Sting is like in character too.
Yes,
he's like trying to be in character. He's like, yeah. And Mean Gene is like trying to wedge himself between Savage and Hogan to not get like third-degree burns or anything.
There's so much.
The best part is Gene will he'll break character for Gene was like, we got a fire going here. We might need to get somebody out here to get this fire out.
Couple things. This was in Virginia. This had 12,000 people in attendance, Oracle. God bless them. They were there. The bits, here's some of the performance art that here's the thing, guys. We have to piece this together as a team here because there's so much, right? Obviously, the elephant in the room is the fact that he actually validates the Observer because they change shit against anyone's better judgment just to just for Hogan to get this victory, right? That's the first thing. We can get, that's the whole part of the result that's hilarious. But the best bit, considering how the world has gone since, is Hogan doing this really strange, this is nothing compared to what the internet will be. That part of his whole thing where he seems to think that the internet is going to wipe out the Wrestling Observer, which, considering all that's happened since, is fucking incredible. Yes. The idea that the internet would embrace Hulk Hogan, which is it's magic, man. It's just insane.
It's one of the all-time great. This is incredible.
Yeah, a dude that is truly out of his mind, just not having anyone to check him, right? No one to rein him in.
Totally delusional.
Yeah, absolutely. It's remarkable. If you haven't seen it somehow, you have to see it. Because there are definitely people that have just know the quote, observe. You need to go watch it, folks. There's so much comedy to be played out on this. It's incredible. We mentioned him. Poor Sting is involved in this whole thing. You have here as the best angle his friendship with Luger, which is really famous stuff, right? Their whole dynamic, and it carries me in the next few months. That was the best angle. The best promo was Sting, accepting doing the deal where he sets up the match with Hogan for TV, which we can talk about a little bit here. But firstly, Sting. Let's start with, because it was the start of the month, let's start with the promo setting up the Hogan match. And then that really strange match they have where Hogan jumps from behind and they do all of that weird.
That was so bizarre. Puzzling. Yeah. And then they tried to work chain wrestling. It was very weird.
Yeah.
The whole thing was weird. They never had very many good matches together, sadly. Although I actually liked their TV match from August of '99. That's actually not that bad.
Record it. Go ahead.
But it's just so bizarre. But Sting, I really like when Sting can really get his teeth into a promo, and he was basically just calling out Hogan, and I don't know, when you watch it weekly, you kind of get into when somebody stands up for themselves against that fucking piece of shit. So it's you know what I mean? So it's just it's just nice to hear when somebody Sting's not the type of guy who's going to throw political jabs at him, but he's at least cut a good promo.
It's nice also he just gives the audience a chance to actually cheer a guy against Hogan, genuinely do it, right? Because the heels that Hogan was working, no one was going to cheer them, even if they hated Hogan. He was working the Dungeon of Doom and shit. It is what it is. Now, okay, let's talk about, I referenced there the best thing, and I agree with Jeff completely about that. The Sting and Luger stuff is really great and has aged really well. And I think they've actually multiple times promotions have tried to recreate it. And listen, man, he had his faults. Lex was so good in this role because I think it was pretty close to the dude behind the persona. He could tap into it pretty easily. Explain a little bit their dynamic because it really is great wrestling TV.
So essentially, Luger is basically a member of the Dungeon of Doom, or at least associated with them. Jimmy Hart's his manager. He's a heel. basically. And Sting, of course, is a babyface, but they're best friends and they're tag partners. And the whole deal is like they'll help each other out and like stop each other from doing shit like when Sting had Flair in the Scorpion Deathlock for too long. Luger came and whispered something in his ear, made him stop. Or when Luger had Savage in the armbar, Sting did the same. So it's a really interesting dynamic, and like Hogan and Savage are getting livid about it. Hogan's like, "No, Stinger, you gotta tell me, dude, what's with you with Luger, dude?" And he's being that, and then of course you got Kevin Sullivan going, "Jimmy Hart, tell me."
You swung for the fences on that. That was pretty impressive.
Sullivan's a tough one. That
That's
Boston,
difficult.
That New England, that accent's a tough one.
Fair. Yeah, it's really good stuff. It's aged great. I do recommend. There's some wonderful moments where they're a team. I think it's a couple months down the line. The famous spot where like he Sting's with Luger and he high fives the fans. And Sting walks in front and Luger's like, "Fuck out here, this handshake shit," and he turns around and he high fives the fan again. Like that stuff is great. Keeping it positive for a minute here. The best match on World War III, and I think anyone that's listened to this series so far won't be surprised. This one's actually kind of a famous one, I think, right? Pay-per-view opener, Johnny Bad and DDP. They kill it here, man.
Oh, it's great.
And it's like, it goes beyond it's good for this particular show. Like, this is just like damn good pro wrestling. Speak to it, but we've put these guys over pretty consistently, but this shit's good, man.
Yeah, this match fucking ruled, man. Like, their habit match is fine, but this one is like,
yes,
this is really, really good. They cut a great pace. The way that they put the match together with the near falls and it's just so excellent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was Mitra brought up in the chat the finish. Yes. I remember loving the finish, but I've watched so much of the stuff. Mitra's gonna have to remind me because I
forget. I'm trying to think if it's I don't know.
Because I know Bad wins because yes. Remember Diamond Doll's up for let's be honest, possession here.
Yes. Which is like, how long is? I know I asked you this last time. Johnny Bad's out in like February, right? He's out here pretty shortly, isn't he?
Yeah. February, I believe so.
Yeah, it's really interesting. When I saw Meech's comment, I was trying to go back and remember which finish it was, but this match is like a real standout.
So it's the one where he hits his dive on the floor and then comes in kind of big man.
There you go. Meech just commented. Yep. Crossbody to the floor, throws him back in. There
we go. Yeah. That was a great finish because it was so definitive. But yeah, this was a great match, man. Like DDP was already showing signs of how good he could be.
Yep.
Like people forget he was good he was already good. Basically, right around the time Nitro started, he got good.
Yeah, and in that sense,
at least it's a fun undercard act.
Is he the most? I never even thought of it this way. And maybe this is like an obvious thing, but is he kind of the wrestler most defined by Nitro as a TV show? That's like that's his run, basically. I mean, he does stuff before, we get that, but like he really clicks around this time.
I mean,
and then he gets red hot.
Right? He's, the only two stars they ever made in the Nitro era were him and Goldberg.
Right.
Booker's arguable.
Mm-hmm.
Booker was super over, but he was kind of. In some ways, his WWE run helped him a lot, but
it's tainted with Booker too. Like when he got pushed, it was such a brutal. So I would say, Goldberg and Booker, Goldberg and DDP. But I would say what makes DDP such a great candidate is like he's there at the start, right? Mm-hmm. Now he isn't always on those Nitros because the TV title stuff is moved. That isn't generally featured, but it's interesting. He's definitely a guy we talk about regularly. We've said it on the Grim before, and Shoot's been there for it. Like, if you just know the yoga guy, like go and watch that. He was damn good, man. He really was.
Over, especially 97, 98, 99. Good Lord.
Yeah, there's the famous angle is one of it's a great WCW moment. The Horsemen, the note was about their lack of storyline involvement. This beginning a strange time in Horseman history, right? I think there's a lot to like about this lineup and this, this kind of era that, Mongo whatever. Like, there's a lot of fun to it, but I get why people roll their eyes. But the big kind of talking point of the Horsemen this time is the way that they feel on the show and how often they kind of feel like a prelim act. Talk a little bit about their time here in this particular month, but then let's get into a wider conversation about, is this just a case of where they fit in the promotion at this time, or is it Bischoff misreading the situation? Go ahead. Let's start with November. Go ahead.
I feel like because of Sullivan as a booker, I feel like the Horsemen teaming up with Dungeon of Doom to take on Hogan and Sabu was probably planned already by this point.
Mm-hmm.
But they were sort of just waiting in the wings.
Right.
And I mean, the way they introduced Benoit is so terrible anyways. They have like this really terrible like video on like Saturday night or something. Yeah. So like there's not a lot of fanfare for that. And it's amazing how short the Pillman loose cannon stuff actually is when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But really it doesn't, they do the Orndorff angle, and then they're off running with the Pillman loose cannon stuff. But that was kind of the beginning of that, really. I mean, Pillman's already got the characterizations down. Like I said, his World War III performance was entertaining, and he's jumping Eddie Guerrero on the aisle and doing all this other stuff. But boy, that Eddie match, it's actually not bad. They have a good match, but Pillman is just screaming some. The racism is.
It was a different time, brother.
Yeah.
Meaning a different time in terms of the way wrestlers viewed using that stuff, to be clear.
Yes, correct.
Correct. I'm intrigued. So I've referenced a little bit, and I want to get into this guy. It's a really interesting talking point. There's a pay-per-view you'll probably know. You know when Flair's working with Conan for like the US title? I think in Flair's book, he has this like pretty long...
Glamboree, right?
Right, sounds right. It was like the summer.
It might have been a Great American Bash.
Yeah, wherever it was, there's a portion in Flair's book, I believe, where he talks about like kind of being insulted by that slot. And it was brought up to Bischoff, and he goes, "Look at the roster. What did you want me to do? I couldn't, it wasn't 1986, and I couldn't have Flair as the champion forever, and so on and so forth."
Hogan.
Right.
There.
So would you say this is a case of Bish misreading the situation, maybe even overcomplicating parts of it? Or is there truth to the Horsemen wasn't what they were a decade ago? This is the right position for them. Is the truth somewhere in the middle? What do you think?
Probably somewhere in the middle, maybe.
Right.
I don't know. It's tough. Bischoff and Flair never liked each other.
Exactly, right? That's the thing.
It's hard. It's hard to look past that. They hate each
other. Right. Yeah, it intrigues me because, like, I get it, right? Like, once you've done the matches with Hogan, it's like, if you want Hogan to be on top, then Flair kind of has to rotate under, but it's like, it sure feels like the Horsemen could be a bigger deal in this next, like, year and change.
But you know what they did? Forget the giant match at Hog Wild, because that was just a way. The draw of that show was that they're in Sturgis at a motorcycle rally that flopped. But that was the draw. Was we're going to be at a motorcycle rally in the summer. The first true big match they had was Hogan and Flair at Clash of Champions in August of '96. Why is that? Because it's Ric Flair. Yeah. They knew, even Bischoff knew, that when you got to get the meat out there right away, you get him in there with Flair. Because it's fucking Flair.
Like, there's a quote at the end of the they did a Rise and Fall of WCW DVD, right? WWE did?
Mm-hmm. They did.
Yeah, they did call it that, right? So I think it's on that one. There's a famous WCW entry where Cornette at the end has this quote where he's like, even until like 1999, 2000, when they actually needed a performance, they go Flair's direction. Like, no matter who they signed and how much, that was what they did. And it's interesting, man. I don't know. I kind of... One of the things that fascinates me most, I know this is impossible, Oracle, but just hear me out. And I think you'll get why this pops to me, is like the idea of a Nitro where Hogan leaves pretty quickly into this because the NWO doesn't happen. Because there's like his contract, there's a lot of evidence they would have just said, hey man, we probably spent enough money on this Hulk Hogan thing. I'm really intrigued by like a live Monday night show being built around something that feels more WCW the way this act did, right? But It was never to be. The Horsemen on Nitro never fully feels right, other than there's a couple moments you and I love, which we'll get into down the line.
Yeah,
right?
Fall in '98, they were basically the biggest.
Right.
I mean, baby faces in the whole company, even over Goldberg, really.
It's incredible. That stuff's, and we'll get there. Eventually, we'll get there, and it will be a pop for sure. Finally, I left for last here, the biggest pop of all for you, Oracle. There's the Sonny Ono buys WCW Pro, the invasion angle that we all remember, an iconic invasion angle, foreshadowing the NWO, of course. Incredible stuff. Go to speak to it, brother. Go ahead.
So we see none of this on Nitro. It's mentioned in passing. When the American males or whoever come out in their entrance, because why build your Starrcade pay-per-view?
Good question. I don't know.
They do bring the Joshi ladies in, and it's funny. So like Heenan's making jokes and stuff at first, and then when they start doing crazy shit, Heenan pops and he starts getting into it.
Yeah.
and then I actually think the match on Nitro is better. It's Bull and Bull and Hokuto versus what is it? Q Suzuki and Oz. Yeah,
I forget, but we'll get into this later with WWF. But this is a fascinating time. Where in this month there's Joshi talent on both the shows, right? And at one point they go like segment to segment with each other. It's kind of wild. Like I think people would be surprised if they didn't watch that as a thing at the time. But anyway, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah. So it was cool to see them in there, and that kind of gave you the. It's kind of why I gave that last week of Nitro the win. There was a bunch of stuff that happened, even though a lot of it was Hogan just like being Hogan, but that tag match and like other stuff on that show kind of gave the flavor of what you wanted out of Nitro, which was that sort of variety show. Kind of like the best of what they would do later on with like a cruiserweight match, and then like a Finlay or Benoit Regal match, and then you'd get like a Harlem Heat tag, or then you'd get like a giant squash, and then like a big man. I mean, just all kinds of like that was always the appeal of Nitro to me. Like how just different.
It's that idea that basically, and I think we see this today in some ways, right? The idea that WWE and WWF, whatever, they have a uniform style, and that's great in some ways and limiting in other ways. The agenting WCW meant that basically guys were going to wrestle the way they wanted to wrestle, for better or worse, by hook or by crook.
Exactly. I want to answer Jeff's question here.
Yes, go ahead.
And, we've discussed this before in the Grand.
Yeah.
Starrcade wasn't Bischoff's main priority. It was Havoc, right? Yeah, and then maybe Bash at the Beach too. I think Starrcade was probably 3, although you could argue Super Brawl was up there.
I would actually go as far as say there's evidence that at this point Bash at the Beach is 1, because like Havoc is such a weird event. I don't even know how to rank that in '95. The thing I will say is, and this is important, and Connor mentions what we talked about before, right? He says now Havoc was the premiere, and I think definitely the year after it's clear that starts becoming the case,
right? Especially when they go to MGM Grand and
and that becomes a whole thing.
The Slim Jim thing is huge.
Yes. Starrcade it should be noted in terms of this particular Starrcade. This is an interesting time for the promotion where they are trying to make the most of this Monday Night War, right? So we'll get into this next month. It's a good question, Jeff, and I think it's a major pay-per-view, but not the major pay-per-view. A big part of why it's weird this particular year is you have the deal where like they're so desperate to do these TV ratings. Christmas Day, 2 days before Starrcade, 3 days before Starrcade, they do Flair and Savage, right, on TV. So like at that point, and we were talking the other day about reading the Nitro by Oracle and I were, and you get an idea then of like why the pay-per-view stuff was always kind of, he never quite saw it that way, Bischoff, right?
Right.
Even with Havoc.
He would always have big matches set up. Like there's about 5 or 6 shows a year where there was a big match.
Yes, absolutely.
Usually it was the main event. But like, so you basically had to hope that the undercard had a good thing going on. And a lot of times it did. If you had a hot undercard like they did in the first half of '98 or the middle of '97, you're bound to get a fun undercard.
It can make up the difference in a lot of ways. And as that faded from the promotion, the frailties became much clearer.
Right.
This is an interesting question. Is the woman wrestling with the Japanese talent, Medusa on Nitro? Not quite yet, right? Medusa, we're going to talk about it in the WWF side of things, but it's coming. What Kenny envisioned with the AEW women's roster. This is a really interesting one because there's definitely been talk that was like a big thing, that you expose the Joshi talent to national TV eyes. It feels like they've kind of gone in the opposite direction from that, right? Let's quickly talk about that. Do you think that's something that, like a kind of, not foul, but do you think that's an experiment that, because especially the way the world panned out there with the pandemic, especially, like, that's something that AEW kind of intended but have gone away from, the use of the Joshi talent?
Yeah, I think the pandemic is the number one reason for that. Travel issues, health. It's just safety. I mean, it's just really hard to do right now.
Sure.
Hopefully we get some effort put into that, and some the ability and the safe ability to do that eventually.
Right. But I think, and it's worth saying, when I say the kind of lack of, there's still that talent's still there, right? But it doesn't feel as central as it once did. It certainly is interesting. Okay, let's put a bow on WCW here. It is worth noting, and I said this to Oracle at the top of the show, I think I said it. Really interesting month where WWF and WCW have these, like, there's a lot of overlap, right? Because when you're building to a 60 battle royal as your pay-per-view main event, it creates a lot of. So we haven't got as much in terms of depth to talk about. I'm intrigued. Is this a point in time where you can actually say, man, this experiment, regardless of commercial success, critically, the issues with their approach to this TV show is showing? Because we talked about before, Nitro is kind of done as like a traditional TV show. Here are our main characters. They're going to be featured in this kind of rotating fashion weekly. Mm-hmm. Are we now starting to see a case of some of those main characters are not doing particularly good stuff and it's killing the show? What do you think?
I think that's definitely true, particularly in the case of Hogan.
Yes.
And they've put Flair on the back burner a little bit, and they've got Savage being wrapped up in this Hogan stuff, and it's hurting him. The Sting and Luger stuff is great, and the Giant's already feeling like kind of an afterthought, in a way. It's just a weak period, man. It's a weak month.
Yeah,
it's just not a great month. Like, I mean, Eddie has a few good matches with Pillman and Craig Pittman and stuff, but like, there's not a lot of. I mean, the TV title stuff is great with Bad and DDP, right. But it's and Kimberly, but it's not. It doesn't get featured as much.
No, it really is an interesting format to explore. If you guys haven't seen the early Nitros, the 1 hour Nitros the run we're talking about now, I recommend watching it because it's just interesting, right? Like, it's a format that I think is kind of, in many ways, like, on its an outlier, and it really is interesting. I recommend people see it for all of its good and bad, especially with Hogan running wild, as you mentioned. Okay, let's move on to the WWF, brother. Survivor Series 95, I know it's an event you like very much. It's one I like too, especially the main event. And let's start there. Let's get into it. This is a really interesting stylistic choice in many, many ways. Right? So I'll quickly set the stage by saying their pre-match sit-down interview was the best promo of the month for you. They had the best match of the month at Survivor Series. And they have this, you described it in the notes as sports build, right? It's this kind of very straight-laced prize fight vibe is what they want to capture, which is saying that people may immediately pair with Brett, but Nash loves that. Like, I don't know how often he pulled it off, but he talks about it with Goldberg. He really liked the idea of trying to create the big fight feel that you see at a big, a world heavyweight title fight in boxing, maybe. Talk us through a little bit, the build, that great sit-down interview, and then the match itself. Go ahead.
Yeah, they really went with a sports build about Nash being champ for a year and taking on all comers, and Brett being back in the in the main event saddle and kind of like being ready to get back at the title. And they talked about their two previous matches from King of the Ring 94 and Rumble 95, and really broke those matches down and talked about why they lost, and there was interference, so that it's in stuff, so that it's no DQ, no count out. Pinfall or submission must decide the winner. So it was a blow-off match. It was really, really well done. And yeah, man, they had to sit down. It was a little long in the tooth. But they just had like this really fun sports build, and it's Brett and Nash, and particularly with Brett, especially in that promo style, Brett's so sincere. You just believe everything he says, and it rules. And he's so passive aggressive sometimes; it's hilarious. But yeah, it was just a good. It was a good long, little setup there, and just kind of made you want to watch the match. And which of course is what what you want them to do.
Right, exactly.
The match itself is great, man.
Absolutely is.
Brett just has these ideas that are just so they make sense, but at the same time he executes them in a way that the excellence of execution. There you go. Like for example, when he ties up the camera wire around his leg, he doesn't take too long to do it. You can tell he's trying to do it as quickly as he can. And Nash does enough to where he's kind of like trying to break out of it or whatever, but it doesn't, he gets right on that line. And by that point, he's all tied up. And man, it's such a good match, man. Like Nash does a really good, it's probably Nash's best performance ever in the ring.
Yeah. And if it isn't, it's probably second to one of his other points. The Rumble match with Brett, I think he's great in. He's just, they really clicked in ring, right? It's interesting.
Yeah. They had great chemistry, man. And and of course, Nash makes the big comeback, and Diesel, of course, call him out here. And Brett takes a very famous table bump that they've used in videos and stuff all the time. And like when I would go get WWF home video stuff when I was a kid, that was always a bump that they would show. And just a great finish where he plays possum and rolls him up in the small package and wins. And Diesel gets immediately mad and beats up a ref and powerbombs Brett, and it's great stuff, man. Just a classic match, one of the best matches in the 90s in the WWF. Like just a great match, great build, great match. Kind of served as a very big character moment for Diesel in particular, who really needed something of an edge, because it's obvious the shit that he was doing the year before was a total failure.
Like most of the matches we remember, beyond the great work and the great story, there's gravity to this in their careers, right? This is a shift for the promotion, and it changes a lot of things, and big time butterfly effect deal. Quickly removing ourselves from this particular moment, I'm intrigued, because when I recently rewatched this, I have to say, I think this is maybe my favorite wrestling presentation possible, and I wish it wasn't as rare as it is now. This build, I really think this is a lost art in every which way. I truly believe that, man.
They don't do it much anymore. They did it with Rock and Brock, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, I don't really know. I mean, maybe the chat can help, but I don't remember.
I really think it's something that's
yeah, the only one that I can ever remember was Rock and Brock.
And look, I know that it's worth saying some of this could probably be too dry for some people, right? I get it. If some people probably don't when the great bit where Brett's watching the match, as you mentioned it, the analyzing the. I get that probably doesn't pop everyone as much as it does pop me, but I just think, I don't know, man. I think stuff like this as your title program allows the kind of feature feud alongside it to stand out more, because this is just two dudes that want the belt, right? And that's a lost art. But anyway, the premier Survivor Series match, which is the wild card deal. Quickly before we get into it, thoughts on that as a concept, as an idea? Do you think it works? That the wild card Survivor Series match. Go ahead.
I like the wild card Survivor Series match. They do basically a version of it now, but it sucks. It's just brand supremacy crap. That doesn't mean anything. This was like baby faces and heels teaming up, and they pushed it as that, and built it as that, and that's what made it exciting and interesting.
Much more different for that time too,
correct?
Right? Which helps. Now, this lock in on a couple of the ideas within it. Ahmed Johnson is featured strong, immediate push for him. Speak a little bit to that, how he's doing. Obviously, Bob O'Neill famously described him as the Kurt Angle before Kurt Angle, which I'll bring up on every show in which Ahmed Johnson is in the notes. But speak to his push here, bro.
Oh, geez. He's over immediately. Charismatic, big, badass looking dude. Just feels like he could beat the shit out of anybody.
Right.
Good offense. Just fun wrestler to watch. He was so over, man. Like, and he had it, and he really had a lot of He had a lot of charisma, and he had a lot of potential. The injury bug I don't think I've ever seen anybody hit with the injury bug worse than him.
Right.
I mean, it's just, guys like Wade Barrett had it really bad, right? But
bless her heart, she's been in the Twitter news recently. Poor Tegan had it pretty bad too, didn't she?
Yeah. God. Oh, absolutely. Goodness.
Yeah.
God, yeah. But yeah, Ahmed just had a terrible injury problem.
Right.
And so, was with a lot, happens with a lot of athletes in any sport, or it's just
such a shame.
Sometimes, yeah, it's such a shame because he was getting the push, man. He was getting the push.
I will say, and this is a little bit separate. I just mentioned Tegan there a minute ago. I do wish, we all use the term injury prone, right? Because sometimes it's just the best term to use for some of these guys. Everyone knows a big Samoa Joe fan. He's been injury prone these last 5-6 years.
Mm-hmm.
I do wish some fans wouldn't weaponize that term the way they do, Man, that kills those guys. And there's men and women out there, they start like, that's a big deal. And it's always sad when you see it used as like just a throw-in insult. It's like, but that's another thing. It's definitely topical right now. Quickly, I want to give love here. I haven't even plugged it because we're having so much fun about 1995. We have a super grin, a wonderful donation from our pal Leland who says, got here late, have to support my favourite series on this channel, All How, and this is a rag sheet, brother. That's fun. That's fun, right? That's really cool. I remember when we were setting this up, I said to Oracle, my favourite thing about this series is everything I do on this channel, or shoot, or Bobby even, the timeline on that is like an hour. It's out of date real quick. People may come back to this for years to come, right? I don't know. So I'm glad that you're enjoying it. It's a fascinating time. I'm learning an awful lot, especially on the ECW side. So, Leland, we appreciate the love. We're glad you're enjoying the content. Okay, let's look ahead here. In addition, in that Spiders match, HBK is back. Right, Shawn Michaels is back after he's beat up by 45 guys. Of course, bless his heart.
Yeah. I noticed the number changed off an awful lot.
Yes. Did I say 45? It's actually 46. My bad. I forgot the guy there. That's my bad. Okay. So Shawn is back.
The entire Marine Corps, actually.
And then in the best angle of the month, the very famous concussion angle against Owen. I think there will be a lot of takes if this played out on TV next week, and I get it. I understand. The reaction this gets is honestly incredible, right? Like the way, I don't think this would get over nearly the same way now. Speak to a little bit. Firstly, start with Shawn's return at Survivor Series, and then transition into the match with Owen and the famed concussion angle. Go ahead, Oracle.
Yeah, so basically, we brought up the story from a couple weeks ago when we talked about October of the famous story, infamous Shawn getting himself beat up outside of a bar in Syracuse pretty badly, and so they play it off that he's having and if you see it, he's in house shows and on TV, he's taking all these big bumps on his head, power bombs and stuff at Survivor Series, and Yokozuna leg drop, and he'll kind of sell woozy a little bit every now and then, and so they do a really good job of setting it up. And so he's having this great match with Owen on Raw. They had really good chemistry.
They did.
And Owen hits an enziguri. Shawn, makes a comeback after, not long, a few minutes after. Now Shawn's doing his thing in the ring, his dance. He stumbles, and the way he does it, he just collapses in the ring.
Yeah.
And because the crowd's going crazy, and the way that they timed it was perfect. Because then all of a sudden, people are like he passed out in the ring, and like Vince and goes up and it's just Lawler actually ends up coming up and he's like, "Is everything okay?" Like they totally pulled this off.
They nailed it. They nailed it.
They nailed it, man.
And if I laid it out to you the way it happened, you'd have been like, "That is way too hokey. Do not do it that way, right?" Like, especially him doing the talk, like you'd never have done it, but it fucking worked, man. It worked tremendously. It's crazy. It's a memorable angle, especially for this run of Raw, right? It's one of the more standout moments. I'm glad you mentioned the match too, because it is. I watched this stuff recently, and that match is tremendous. Owens, man, he's great. It's a bit like he's great altogether. But these TV matches, he gives them something that honestly none of the other guys are giving them on the hillside, really. Right? Like he's very, very valuable.
So good. He's so good.
Absolutely. An angle we've consistently praised here throughout this process has been the 1-2-3 Kid Razor Ramon deal. Right? It was a big month for that. This is when Kid turns heel. Joins the $1 Million Corporation. Was that a go home for Survivor Series? They did that?
It was a go home. Like Sid and Razor, and then it was originally going to be a title match, but Gorilla Monsoon, since something could go awry, so he.
Oh, there you go.
So he. Since something could go wrong, so he decided to make it a non-title match, and Kid was referee.
That rules.
And Razor had Sid up for the Razor's Edge, and Kid pulled down Sid from behind.
Yes.
Sid hit the powerbomb, and then Razor got paid off by Ted DiBiase. So and then remember, Ted shoved the money down Razor's throat, and Kid took the money out and put it in his pocket.
There you go.
It was very well done.
So the turn itself hit for you. You've been high on the angle for consistently. So the turn was up to par, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts on the direction of putting him in this particular group of heels Sid. because it's an interesting group. It's an interesting time for that group.
The $1 Million Corporation just went on and on and on. It was like it was the head mid-card heel faction for the entire New Generation, basically. Well, not the entire, but for most of it.
Right.
94, 95. Until hilariously Austin ends up being the last member and it just falls apart.
That's wild to think about, right? Like he's like the end of it. The ringmaster should do, like it's wild to think about. I wish there was a hotter place, like there was a hotter kind of destination for Kid at the end of this whole thing returned, but you get what you get, I suppose, right?
Yeah. But I remember the Sid 1-2-3 Kid tag team from the stuff I've seen before, kind of enjoying it.
Makes sense.
So it's Sid just being like, "I'm the master on the road."
Being Sid, man. Being Sid, he's the fucking. That's all he needs to do, right? Be Sid and he'll pop us.
Yes.
Kid can do all the work, but as long as he's Sid. Wow.
Right, exactly. Sid can hit his awesome powerbomb and then just make his faces and sweat profusely. And
there was a clip. It came on my Twitter the other day. And it was like just a montage of his power bombs. How much did it rule when Sid he decided that he would change the way he does the powerbomb every time, and he would do he would sometimes drop to like a knee. Other times he would just fling guys, like he would
or when he'd pick him up with one arm or whatever, he'd just do this and then slam him. You know what I'm talking about? Like he's all sorts of weird.
He's peak meathead wrestling, right? Like that dude's just
it rules.
He's tremendous. There are guys that have got his frame, and I bet mechanically that will never quite capture the insanity that followed Sid. There's a charm to it. I have to stress. You have to go and see that stuff, folks. It's incredible. Or whatever people say about Sid, his peers, whoever, always got over. There was never a live crowd that didn't react to Sid.
There's a reason he was a main eventer. Great look, and boy, that guy, boy, did he have charisma. Holy cow, was he charismatic?
That presence he had, it was a real thing. Okay, we talked about last month the big thing where the heels stood tall, right, and that very un-WWF booking play. That brings us here where Taker is doing the Phantom of the Opera deal with and that's like a pretty famous look, right? They always when they love doing the evolution of Taker part of these video packages, they always get that one in there. Give us an update on what he's doing here, because he's involved in the very funny Survivor Series match in which he's just with all of his friends.
Yes. He comes out and basically squashes everybody, and it actually rules.
Yes.
And Lawler's too afraid to be in there, and they throw him and then like Mabel keeps getting away, and like he just flees at the end for a count out. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in this big feud with Mabel now. In the last episode of November, he faces Kama to get back his urn, because remember Kama took his urn and turned it into a necklace. So now he's trying to get back the power of the urn, and he finally beats Kama and gets it back. But then Mabel takes it from him, and so now they're building to a casket match at Seasons Beatings, In Your House Seasons Beatings.
So, I don't know if I've actually seen that. I may have stopped at that point in the WWF side of things. That would be. Would you recommend I watch that before the next show? I thought that would be a Matt classic over there in the WWF.
I've gotten to the first week of December. I haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
But
I'm sure you have high expectations, though, right? Those casket matches, they were always
I'm most excited to see Brett and Bulldog. Honestly,
I love that match. I'm looking forward to that. I really like that match. There's times I've watched it and it hasn't clicked me the same way, but like that can be tremendous, man. I'm going to try and rewatch it for the next time, because there are times I watch it and I prefer it to Wembley, SummerSlam night. But I don't know. There's a magic to that match that makes it hard, right? I go back and forth. We'll talk about it next time. Within his aforementioned Survivor Series match, the recently, dismissed and disgraced executive, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, he continued his program with Henry Godwin. Talk about this. This is the program everyone cites when they talk about his like beginnings here, right? Like his early days, Triple H, that is. So this talk about his program with Triple H or Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Henry O. Godwin. Go ahead.
Yeah, this was his first big program. It's a banger, folks. Not really. I actually don't hate Henry Godwin because he puts so much effort into the gimmick. I mean, I hate the gimmick sucks, but I respect him for the effort that he puts into the gimmick, like legitimately. I like the thing where he like slopped himself, and like it's Matt Triple H on Raw, and Triple H was like, ooh, it's a fun little, it's fine. It's an undercard feud. I appreciate when they do those things. It's typical 95 WWF, like, occupational gimmick.
Yeah.
He's a hog farmer, Vince. He's a hog farmer,
There you go. That's good. Do you know, Oracle, that in 1994, the greatest wrestling mind of all time, Greg Gagne, told the executives at Turner that Hunter Hearst Helmsley was the future of the business? And we're actually maybe even convinced that the Jean-Paul Levesque name came from Greg himself, because Greg's son is called Jean-Paul Gagne. This is a real thing. He's a big fan, man.
This is not a real thing.
I don't know where the Jean-Paul Levesque name came from, okay? But I do know that Greg's son has got the same name. And he was there when Triple Paul went through. And more than that, Greg has said with confidence, I told the Turner execs he was the future of the business. He's very proud of himself. One more Greg take before we move on. He told Jim Cornette in like 2014 the only good wrestler in WWE was Daniel Bryan, which you could have worse opinions, right? And he does this fucking deal, okay? Folks, I know this is not 95, this is a pop. He goes, I know how to bring it back, professional wrestling. He's like, I have this hybrid of MMA and wrestling that I'm going to bring to fruition. He goes, but I can't talk about it too much on the air. I've got to talk to you about it after, Jim. And like, you remember, Jimmy is like a couple years removed from trying this with Ring of Honor and it failing miserably, which is even funnier. But the idea that Greg had ideas he couldn't say on the show and that he like said to him in the hotel bar like that night, and Jim says, this is the best part. Jim goes, there's not, the rest is, they're just not up to it, Greg. And Greg goes, I'll train them. I'll make them.
That's incredible. That is amazing. Could you imagine if Greg like tries to do like his dad's camp from like the early 70s? He's out here like trying to get him like Carl Gotch trained and shit. God, that's incredible. That's
yeah.
Why can't people just be carny liars?
It's
why can't
funny,
every wrestler be Carney Liars?
Because like ultimately it's harmless, right? It's just funny. Like everything that comes up, he has a full explanation as to how it was his idea. Like whether it was, and if it was bad, he just removes himself. Like no way, it wasn't happening. He's special. Yeah, basically, it was like the way that he describes it to Jim is that no one's ever had the idea of like fusing shoot fighting with pro wrestling, and that's just fucking awesome in its own way. Did you see the one shoot?
He was trying. Really, what it's called is Enochiism. That's actually what it's called.
Yes.
And that failed miserably.
And he was trying to do it 10 years after that.
Oh, good
Lord. That clip where he claims that Crockett saw how they did their TV and copied it is one of the most incredible lies ever told on any platform ever. Like anyone that's seen any of that TV knows they could not be further from each other. But anyway, enough about Greg. I'm sorry, I call it Pop Sweet today. All right. So anyway, let's conclude here with we just mentioned it earlier about the Joshi talent coming over, and they have a Match of Survivor series. They're involved in the Match of Survivor, as I say. Medusa's in the program by Kong. Not long left on this Fed run for Medusa, right? Which we'll get to when the time comes. But talk a little bit about this whole scene, Oracle.
If I'm not mistaken, this is something that I read years ago. Wasn't Aja supposed to win the belt?
I'm not sure. That's definitely a thing. Yes, I don't know where it's from.
I feel like there was something going on there. Boy, Aja was just lighting these ladies up, man.
Yeah.
In the Survivor Series tag, especially, she lights up Medusa with her fucking Hurricane.
It rules.
Like, good Lord,
it fucking rules.
She's so great.
Yeah, like absolute legend. It's tremendous piece.
It's just a fascinating feud because they had the Medusa and Bull program the year before, and this Aja program is even kind of more exciting because Bull's a little bit more. Bull kind of do the high flying and stuff.
Right.
Even with her size, she was able to do kind of that stuff. But the Aja was such physical. Medusa it was such physical. I mean, like, I don't love Medusa in the ring really much at all, but like, she's tough and she'll go in there and she'll go in there and
she'll scrap
and throw down.
Yeah.
So like, I just in some ways I'm kind of disappointed that like, and at least in terms of that, I would have liked to seen 1 10, 12 minute Medusa Aja match.
Rumble 96 is
there you go. Thank you, Jeff. I remember reading that at some point.
Right. Quickly, you mentioned about Medusa, and I assumed you would be on that side of the fence in terms of her work because most are. Am I alone in being kind of fascinated by their historical rebranding of Medusa? I think it's really interesting. It's almost like they're so desperate to continue to build the Monday Night Wars legacy that they've made Medusa a bigger deal than she ever was during the Monday Night Wars.
I can tell you right now, and we're not there, and we'll get to there, on our next episode. But if I'm not mistaken, it could have been the December 11th one, but it was like the December 11th or the December 8th. I'm pretty sure it was the December 18th Nitro.
Right.
Well, I got that mic awfully close.
You're fine.
But almost hit myself in the jaw with it. I've been, Aja Kong Hurricane levels. I'd have been in pain. But like, I recall, if I'm remembering right, isn't the Horseman beating up Paul Orndorff angle on the same show as Medusa debuting?
I don't know. I get confused with these times.
Look, I was 3 years old. I wasn't watching it all at the time, but I can almost guarantee you that everybody was talking about the Horseman beating up Orndorff angle over Medusa dumping the. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure it was a big deal to see her come on and dump the belt. Like, don't get me wrong, but I feel like people were probably more talking about the Horseman,
but even more
ending Orndorff's career than they were.
The lack of follow up means that even if they were talking about it that night, they weren't talking about it for long, right? Like, I'm not even trying to knock Medusa. It's not her fault. It's fascinating, right?
I'm not either.
Oh, I know you're not. Like, it's just fascinating the way that, like, they've made like a point of like establishing her in history, and it's like, why?
It's bizarre. Like, I think
it is, yeah.
It's almost like this weird, like, grasping for anything that they can find from the Attitude Era that was even remotely relevant, so they can,
Well, yeah, because that's what they've done is they've basically, in their history, in their timeline, Medusa is like the woman that comes before Trish and Lita. Now, that's in their like WWE chronicles. It's like Medusa, she was a game changer, and then there was some other women or whatever, and then they get to Trish and Lita, and they only talk about them from that time.
Mm-hmm.
And then now the thing is, Michelle McCool and Beth Phoenix are like that era. God only fucking knows what they're going to do for this time watching now. If we could, for all we know, brother, in 4 years we'll be sitting here listening to about Lacey Evans.
Oh my god!
I kid, but it is pretty weird. Okay, you said it earlier, and we'll quickly conclude with this. A step forward for WWF and a big shift in direction. Fair to say?
Yeah. They've really. I really like the Brett with the all challengers. Vince does a great bit on commentary at one point where he's like, Brett has Diesel, or he says after he wins the belt, he says Brett has Backlund in front of him, Lawler behind him, the Bulldog set up, Diesel and Taker on the other on his right and left. Like he's like this champion with all comers and all challengers, and I really like it. And it's good stuff, and I think they kind of throw everything at Brett during this short title reign. But Brett was always the guy who should have been the champ. I'm watching it, in chronological order. I'm so glad he's a champ now.
He's the man.
It's Brett, man. Like he needs the belt,
You mentioned about that part of like the challenges all around him deal. That also is perfect, and it extends that sports vibe, right? It's like the new champion has been crowned, but the contender list is that there's a lot to like about that presentation.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. It's a necessary shift. I mean, it's one that's going to greatly increase your enjoyment of this run here. So hopefully things are looking up in the big picture anyway. Certainly not a foolproof product, but it's took a big step this month. So we'll see what happens in December. Speaking of such, any broad kind of preview of the episode? We'll probably do in a couple of weeks' time, probably, right? The next episode, December. What do you think? Give us a little kind of hint.
It depends on if I get a lot watched. We might be back on next Thursday, this weekend.
There you go. Okay.
I'll let you know by Monday morning,
Mm-hmm.
or Monday afternoon, maybe at the latest.
Right.
If not, 2 weeks from now. Definitely 2 weeks from now, possibly. We'll go 50-50 for next week. Because like I said, I've already got the first week of December done, so we'll go 50-50 on that. But be prepared to wait another 2 weeks as usual. So what we've got coming up is we've got In Your House Seasons Beatings with Brett Bulldog headlining for the title.
Right.
And Blood. We've got Starrcade 95 and the WCW versus Japan best of 7 points thing that they do.
Yep.
Also the triangle match with Flair and
fascinating match. Fascinating
Sting
match.
And Luger and Flair and Savage, and also Blood with Flair.
Oh yeah, desperate Blood too. Yeah. This shit needs some heat, Blood.
God bless him for that too.
Yeah.
And we have ECW Holiday Hell, the final event of 1995 that I'll be watching on December 29th. A huge show. The first show in New York City for ECW in the famous Lost Battalion Hall that I believe is headlined with Cactus Jack and Sabu. So
it's big stuff. Big stuff ahead, right? It's such an interesting project to look at it through all three, right? Because you really get a grasp of how much is going on. It is exciting stuff. Okay, I said to Oracle, I think we'd be a little bit short here because two of the pay-per-views had such all-encompassing builds there, right? With the multi-man matches and the 60-man Battle Royal.
I remember when I was like, this will be a 2.5 hour show, and you're like, no, brother, we got World War III.
It will compact, man. It'll be fun. So yeah, we'll be back either next Thursday or the week after that with December. Oracle and I will be back before that, though. LateNightGrin.com, right? And the Late Night Grin, an early edition, head-to-head SmackDown. It will be starting at a time, an incredible 1 a.m. for me. Oracle, can you believe this? I'm used to starting at like 4. That's incredible. What a win. It's immediately after Rampage, LateNightGrin.com. Before that, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, the free agents. We're focusing on Athena this week, who had a draw with Thunder Rosa last weekend. Jay Shell and I are going to go through all of our potential destinations, fantasy book some. I think that's going to take us pretty close to the start of Rampage. So it's going to be a really fun Friday night here at Late Night Grin. That shall be free. The Late Night Grin, obviously, behind the paywall. You can sign up for just $1, latenightgrin.com. And that will conclude the week for us. I may have a guest spot on the weekend, but when that comes to fruition, I will talk to you about it. I will promote on my Twitter and such. Speaking of such, at Joe Hulbert, at King Motivator H. Next week, we go again, right, brother? This schedule, we kind of got it penciled in now. We go again. Big thank you to Oracle, who has been on, like, by the time tomorrow's done, 4 shows this week, right? Like, you've been on it, man. So any final words here before we wrap up this week's Historical Oracle? Go ahead.
It's I'm still chugging along. I'm enjoying this project somehow, some way. I'm still pretty confident I can get through the hour. May 96 is that's I'm confident of that. Once we start to rev up with the 2-hour nitros and stuff, things will get interesting. Although WCW was quite good for the first several months of that. So
the timeline connects in a way where that stuff will be more fun to watch too. So the conversations will be really interesting. So there you go.
Right. Exactly. Well, an early grin tomorrow, folks. 8 p.m. Eastern.
Can't wait, brother.
Exciting time.
It's not going to wipe out my whole Saturday. I'm so pumped. It's going to be a great time. We're going to swing for the fences, boys. It's going to be early. So, we'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you at 5 p.m. Eastern Time with Jay Shell, Oracle and I, Shoot, Bobby, immediately after Rampage, latenightgreen.com. We appreciate the love. We appreciate the support. This has been a big one for us. I think the Cody videos are now like 1.3K, which is fucking nuts. Jack Crosby is claiming that he drew the house on that one. He will not be paid a penny. We appreciate the love. latenightgreen.com, folks. All hail, and we'll speak soon.